I got my start at a very early age in the seminar space, and that was with a guy by the name of Jim Rohn. Some of you know him for what he's done well. Some of you may know him because he was Tony Robbins' mentor. He was my mentor as well. We got a chance to play together from the time I was 18. And then when I was 24, I took over as president of his company. Long story short, when that time period in history, real estate was exploding. It was becoming the franchise systems. It was no longer the mom and pop era. This goes way back. I've been doing this a long time. And that time frame was when things were exploding. Century 21 was becoming huge. There were other franchises, ZRA, some of the older franchises were in their infant stages, and I was known in those areas. And somewhere after I left Jim Rohn's company, I started a company called Hobbs Herder Advertising, and that was the beginning of the real impact on the real estate space. We had a very specific niche. We got very well known for something we did. Biggest thing that happened for us back in that era when I got into the real estate space as a trainer was really we were talking about this idea of personal branding, which seems pretty funny to think that, wow, it's a big deal now. But it now it's become commonplace. At that time, not commonplace. In fact, the fact that these franchises were coming up, they were the big brands. We joined companies so we could have a gold coat. We joined companies so we could wear a powder blue coat. We joined companies so we could have a red coat. And these companies became the biggest companies of their time. But we were coming out saying, it's not about the company. It's not about you, them at all. It's about you. It's your brand. And until you get seen, known, remembered, people know you, like you, trust you, and people are coming your way, you got no chance because it's not about the floor duty, which of course was of the era. It's not about the company getting the accolades and wow, they're number one. Yeah, they're number one and you're broke. And we understood that it was no way that there was any correlation between the success of the company and the success of the agent. There still isn't to this day, by the way. That's still true. That there's no correlation between the company's success and the agent's success. And how do I know that? Because there's successes and failures in every company. So if it was up to the company, then everybody would be successful. If that's what we do in this company, then we would all be successful. But it's not true. It has to do with building your own brand. And that was where we started our big push. We taught people how to tell stories and build their brands, their personal brands. And again, today, some of the very things that everybody, oh, be authentic and tell your story. We were doing that 30 years ago. So that was before anybody had ever heard of it. In fact, there was no personal branding in any industry. And we started it in the real estate space, which really mushroomed out into many other areas. And for that, we impacted a lot of people because the thing about marketing that's so powerful is that it is how you get people coming your direction. And up until that point, it was really about we sat on the floor duty waiting for calls to come in for real estate transactions, meaning they're calling on a house and they got me because I was sitting there waiting for calls. Or I was on the phone, pounding the phones or knocking on doors. I can go out and get them. And we said, that's lame. That's not the way business works. Business works by attracting clients. Taco Bell doesn't call you and say, yo quiero Taco Bell. They aren't calling you. Nike doesn't call you and say, hey, we saw you running yesterday. Those shoes are pathetic. You got to see our new line. Nobody does that. Everybody creates a brand, builds a marketing system, and attracts clients to them. And when realtors started to do that, we started seeing humongous responses. We started seeing tremendous growth. Agents were doing volumes nobody had ever seen before. And that was where we started. So the stories from days of old, amazing stories where people were doing 3 million and went to 15 million in 1 year. Now, again, that sounds like nothing today, although there's plenty of people that don't do 3 million and certain more people that don't do 15. But the reality is at that time, that was astronomical numbers. And we literally could take people from 5 million to 25 million in a year, 2 years. They couldn't get there by themselves. There was no way to make that many calls. There was no way to knock on that many doors, but the leverage and then the corresponding systems that went along with more leverage, meaning now that you've got so many clients that you're doubling, tripling, quadrupling your business, how do you handle them all? How do you get the mindset in the right place? How do you put the systems in place? How do you have a business that really operates? And by the way, business works. It's marketing based. Sales career, a sales job, lots of things revolve around call people, but that's not what we do. We're in a business that allows us to build something huge if we set up the structure, the systems, and by the way, the key is marketing. I remember Peggy Lucas when she first started. In fact, she's still in my world to this day. And her first year in real estate, she did 1.9 million. 1 year later, her first year with me or with us was literally a 10 point, 11 point some million dollars. And again, those kinds of shifts and changes, we saw them eternally. We saw the biggest agents in the whole world that were going from $30 million. Nobody ever heard of $30 million. And suddenly they were doing 60 million, 70 million, $80 million. When I stepped out of that company, stepped out of Hobbs Herder, and when I did, that was 2010. The biggest client I had that year as I left was $212 million in sales. And that was not with a team of 40 or 50 or 70. You see some of these gigantic teams today. That was with a team of, that was just like, that was dead volume out of very few people because the calls are coming in a very different way. The calls aren't coming in saying, come and interview with us. The calls are coming in saying, come list me. The calls are coming in saying, we see your stuff all over the place. We see you everywhere. Do your magic for us. We want to sell our property. And when people started identifying the agent as the only answer for their needs, it became a non-issue, a no-brainer for people's volume to skyrocket because the leverage was in the marketing. The early days, I was with Jim Rohn, and if you haven't seen his stuff, you don't know who he is, clearly that's worth looking into because this guy, when he was passing, he was sick and he was dying. And when the biggest name speakers in the world, names we would all identify, including Tony Robbins, I was there, Mark Victor Hampton, who sold more than anybody's books in the world, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Everybody came to say, thank you, Jim. He was a big deal in settling that industry. And I felt really fortunate to be with him because I was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, very formative stages of my business career. And I just remember so many things that he said, which were all about attitude, mindset, personal development, that so many people are working on their jobs, they're working on their businesses, they're working on the day-to-day tactics, but they don't work on themselves. And the reality is that we're the driver for all that. I often use, there was a guy that was the president of our company back in those era that in that time. And I remember him taking this young kid, and yes, I am a little smaller. So he took this little young kid aside and he said, he was an engineer by trade. So he said, I think in engineering terms. And he said, if you take a pipe and you get a certain amount of flow through it, and whatever it is, I don't care, water, juice, oil, it doesn't make any difference what it is, but the pipe will only carry so much. And if you get to the point where you're at capacity and you push more through, somewhere you're going to find you've got a rupture in the system. There's going to be some weakness that will be exploding. And he said, the best thing that you can think of, if that's you as a human being, our best way of getting bigger in our results is to expand our pipe. You can put more through. You can put the same amount through with less stress, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. You can put more through. And if you keep increasing the size of the pipe, there's no limit to how big one could be. And I saw that as my challenge. And I remember reading like a fiend. I was just picking up every book I could find. It was personal development, personal growth, time management, sales skills, everything that was about growing skills and growing me and mindset, because mindset is such a powerful part. And I think even as I watch the success stories inside of this personal branding world many years later, what I recognized was that people often held themselves back and did not do what they could do based on their own self-image, based on their own inability to see themselves as bigger. And I've always had a philosophy that we were born into greatness and then we've forgotten so much of the greatness because we were buying into other people's stories, right? Maybe dad told me I wasn't good enough. And in my case, that's what happened. And there was just people that are influential. And maybe it's not even putting down, but just looking around and being around average and going, oh, this is how life gets done. And we don't see that it's really the influence of our own growth internally, what's possible, what the possibilities exist in reality that are much bigger than what we play with most of the time. And that we can be that person, that we are that person. And so I believe that mindset is huge. And I believe that knowing the depths of ourselves and continuing to grow on the emotional, mental parts of our business is where we get the most. And it's probably the biggest leverage in the world that everybody overlooks. We're looking at marketing, we're looking at people, we're looking at stuff. But the number one leverage point is when you become bigger. because you can never connect all the dots that are possible until you can see there are dots there to connect. It's awareness. I think, first of all, we have to see the possibilities and the opportunities that exist around us. And so the first step becomes awareness. Do you hang around with people that are thinking bigger and doing bigger that you can look at and go, wow, I didn't realize that was possible? Because again, we get influenced. Jim Rohn said, you're influenced mostly. You become the 5 people you hang around with the most. And I think that's largely true. Tony Robbins refers to it today as proximity, being in proximity of power and powerful people. And I don't mean ego power, like people who play big. And when we get around people who play big, we start playing bigger. And I think for the majority of people, we don't see that side of ourselves. And when it comes to today's success in business, let's say social media, I should run some posts, I should do some videos, but I don't see myself as being worthy. What do people want to listen to me for? What is it that I do that's so special? Like, why would anybody care? And a large part of that is right inside. That's happening here. And so again, we've got to get the head and the heart aligned so that we've got the expansiveness of what's possible and the ability to go into seeing ourselves as who we really are, not the one that we grew up with, not the one that was maybe set by other people, but the reality. We get to make choices at some point in our life. We get to make our own choices. I'm not accepting the story that I was told. I'm not accepting the story that I grew up with. I'm writing my own story. And I think for a lot of people, they don't see that because they're not around other people who are pushing that. I know people who love being number one in their world, whether it be in the family. Everybody looks to me. That's great. But if you're playing in a small family, that's not that hard. If you're playing in a small company, I'm number one in the office. I'm number one in the company. That's great. But there's all 6 of you. So it's not that big a deal. So we have to look and say, if I'm really playing with a group that demands more, it demands more of us. It creates the need for me to become the bigger me that I was intended to be. I was at the tennis courts today, actually, and watching these people play. And I was watching people, and I could tell they were matched unequally. And I was thinking, now the lesser player doesn't mean they're a lesser person. The lesser player is playing up. Their game's going to grow. The person on the other side, they're playing down. Their game's going to shrink. They're actually undermining their own skill sets because they're not going to want to take it out on that person that doesn't know how. And so they dumb it down. They play a lesser game. And we do that in life. We do that in life. We get around people and we go, I don't want them to feel bad because I'm leaving them. I don't want them to feel bad because I'm not hanging around with them. They really want me to be around and I love them. Of course you do. They're in your life. They're your family, your friends, whatever. It's great. Just watch the influence of others because the influence of others is much more powerful than, and most of us don't take that into account. I was thinking about parenting from a different standpoint and thinking about how parents will tell kids, be careful who you hang around. It's a pretty common parental push. Be careful who you hang around. I don't know about hanging with that guy. I don't know about hanging with her. She's trouble. But then I questioned one other piece, which was, when does that not hold true anymore? Like, at what stage does it not matter who we hang around with? Because as adults, we don't go, hey, be careful who you hang out with. And we should be having that conversation with ourselves, but we don't. We're going to fix our kids, but we're going to hang out with the people we hang around with because we've gotten to that place in our lives where we think it can impact us, but it impacts us dramatically. The expectations that we act through, the things I expect from life. And I don't mean expectation like entitlement, what I expect to be able to do, which is anything. The possibilities are endless except for what's stuck in here and what's stuck here. So if we start to open that up and shift, we can do magic. First of all, I do love what I do. So I will say that if I could get accused of anything, I would probably be considered a bit of a workaholic. But I don't consider it work. So I'll just say that. I don't consider it work because I love what I do. I love helping people. I've done it for years. I've done it for free. I love it. That said, I love to play tennis. Pickleball is now my newfound thing, except that I ruptured my Achilles. So I'm right now on hiatus from all that. Fly fishing is a big deal. And of course, I love golf. I wish I could do it well, but I love golf. It's one of the most fun sports ever. By the way, sports is a good amplifier of who people are inside, how they feel about themselves. And you hear people growing through sports, right? Because sports is a place where we have to put ourselves out there. And at some point when we realize I won't take the shot, and suddenly I took the shot and I hit it and I see a whole different version of me. Yeah, you can absolutely see yourself through, see how you are through sports. You play timid, you're probably going to play how you do one thing. Maybe that's another way to say it. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And I watch people all the time in their behaviors in sports, whether it be one person sports like tennis, which is an easy place to watch people, or group sports, right? Where they pass the ball. They don't want the ball, they pass the ball. They want to get rid of the ball, right? It's don't put me on the hot seat. And you can also see people, give me the ball. I want the shot at the moment. I want to take the final shot because I have confidence that I can do it. I know myself well enough to know that this is what I can do. So that, yeah, there's a lot of interesting tie-ins between sporting and sports of any kind and how we do life. But I think there's also so many lessons about it's not over till it's over. Play all the way through. I remember watching a game in person. I used to have season tickets to the Lakers when I lived in Los Angeles. And I remember them being 29 points down. You can check the game out. It's true. You can find it in history. 29 points down. And I left the game. I left because obviously it was hopeless. And then on the radio, as I was leaving and driving home, my 60 miles to home, I witnessed the game comeback of a lifetime where they came back and won by, I think, 3 points. And what you have to understand is that it doesn't matter what the game score says right now. I don't care if you're 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 80. It doesn't make any difference where you are in life. The game's not over yet. How do I know? Because you're still here. And it doesn't matter what the score is because that can change too. Doesn't matter what's going on because you can create momentum, change momentum, and come back and win the game. And what really matters is that you are still playing. What really matters, you're still shooting, you're still charging forward, doing what it takes, and creating the momentum for yourself. And in the end, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, although I will tell you, I'm a big fan of winning. I think what really matters is that you have all of you all in all the time.